Hmm. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here and just taking this time out on a Sunday afternoon to connect with us. So my name is Bonita Ford, and I am the board coordinator of PAN. And I just wanted to let you know that we're just as part of our introductions, I want to invite all of us to introduce ourselves and just say a word about what we're hoping to get out of today, and also to acknowledge the traditional territory that we're living in. And I think for me, the reason that's important is that it's part of it is about acknowledging who came before us and really being mindful that this work is not only about healing our relationships with the plants and the animals and the earth and the water, it's also healing our relationship with the people who have come before us, the people who are here now, all of the land protectors, the water protectors that are a part of these communities, all of our communities, and that are a part of this larger movement of transformation, of change, of co-creating wellness and well-being and resilience for all of our communities, which includes the social human communities as well as the ecological communities. And so the place where I live, we call Perth, Ontario, and this is unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And the Anishinaabe grandmothers and grandfathers that are a part of my life have been some of my most important teachers in the quietest of moments around fires and in preparing meals together and in harvesting plants together. And so I just really want to honor the privilege of being in this place and the privilege of knowing teachers who have been and continue to be gracious with their knowledge and gracious with their wisdom and their teachings. So this is where I am in Anishinaabe territory, and PAN is based in Western Massachusetts, and that is, I believe it's a mix of Mi'kmaq, Pocumtuck, and Wampanoag territory. And I am here today because I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of you. We're in a period of wanting to invite and connect with more people in the community, and we're in a period of change in the board for PAN as an organization. And so just looking forward to welcoming new hands, new hearts, new minds to the PAN board, to the PAN community, whether it's that inner circle or just kind of the larger movement. And so I would love to have all of you introduce yourselves. If you could please share your name, what you're hoping to get out of today, and also whose territory you're in, or maybe where you grew up.
I can go ahead and start. My name is Melanie Welch. I am a PAN board member. I am currently in Natick, Massachusetts, which I believe is on the lands of the Nipmuc, the Massachusetts, and the Pawtucket people. And I am just thrilled to be here and to be able to share with you my experience so far with the Permaculture Association of the Northeast, and to see how you might like to contribute, whether that be as just a member or perhaps to dive in deeper as a committee member or even a board member. So thanks.
Thanks, Lainey.
I can go next. So my name is Liz. I am also a PAN board member, current. I am coming from central New Hampshire, so specifically Plymouth, New Hampshire. And I am hailing from unceded Abenaki territory here. I'm so excited to see some new faces. This is great. And I hope we have a lively conversation today.
Thanks, Liz.
Hi, everyone. I can go next. My name is Matthew Glassman. I am an old friend of Melanie Welch. That's how I found out about Pan. I am on the unceded land of the Nipmuc, Mohican, and Pocumtuck, also known as Western Massachusetts. I'm in a small hill town called Ashfield, rural hill town, and I'm here today just to learn more, find out sort of ancillary ways I can be supportive and connect to other coalitions that I am a part of. I'm not in a moment in time where I can be a reliable board or anything official, but I can be an enthusiastic person and get to know you and see any connections that can be discovered. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew.
I can go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Redikoff. I'm currently in Temiskaming Shores in northeastern Ontario. So it is the place of the Temiskaming First Nation and Anishinaabe people, but I'm from Ottawa, which is Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And yeah, just looking forward to learning more and meeting everyone. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Lindsay.
I'll go now. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. I'm currently in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is Pawtucket and Massachusetts land. And I just graduated college last year in the pandemic and moved to a new place. And, you know, in college, you're there's a lot of organizations and just a lot of connection to community. And so I'm excited to learn more about PAN and also just get connected more to this new community that I'm in and to people more, especially with the pandemic. So, yeah. And I also met Mulaney at an event a few weeks ago, and that's why I'm here. She recruited me.
Thanks, Natalie. Hey, Emily, when you introduce yourself, would you also say a word about the Mid-Atlantic permaculture community?
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm calling in right now from an emerging intentional community on a farm in Northern Virginia, the historic land of the Saponi, Tutelo, and other nations and current closest territory of the Piscataway Conoy people. I grew up in Western New York on the land, the unceded territory of the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois Confederacy, quite far west near like Rochester, Buffalo area. And I moved here in this area to West Virginia 3 years ago and was working for a spiritual retreat center, helping them kind of do some exploration of permaculture, and started doing some permaculture organizing out of this big land-based site, and kind of worked with and inherited the Mid-Atlantic Permaculture Convergence from the person who had been organizing it 2 years prior. So I organized it in 2019 and 2020. In 2019, it was more of a 3-day sort of festival-esque conference where we had 25 local teachers from the states right around here, so Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, offer classes and workshops of things that they were teaching. And it was also kind of this big networking opportunity, it felt like. And then last year, with COVID, switched the convergence to be a virtual gathering that was more targeting practitioners and having conversations looking at what more regional solidarity could look like, really kind of centering permaculture and whiteness and decolonizing, like conversations about decolonizing permaculture and also just processing the whiteness that's within the permaculture movement. And trying to essentially set up a platform at some point to enable the sharing of labor, information, and resources in more of a kind of solidarity based, equity skewed approach to permaculture in the future. But I don't really feel like as able or willing to be holding so much of it. It felt pretty isolated the past couple of years, and I just burn out. I have a burnout tendency, and so been looking at like kind of figuring out a team or syncing up with what's already out there. And I think in January, someone from PAN had reached out to talk about connecting. Yeah, it sounds like you is to talk about connecting the MAPC with Pan's work. Actually, Lisa DiPiano was a teacher of mine in Brooklyn when I was living there a few years ago. So I'm really excited to just like even feel more connected to folks who are looking to do this kind of organizing, but also really mindful of the blind spots in permaculture and how deeply problematic it can be for all of us and certain folks in particular. So I'm excited to like see some of the stuff that is coming out of Pan and excited to be connected to you all.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone for introducing yourselves and the places you're from. So, and this might be jumping the gun. I just do want to put the seed out there to let folks know that we are planning that Pan is hosting a roundtable discussion on decolonizing permaculture on December the 7th. And so I can send more information out about that towards the end of this session. And I think that will be coming out when we do, when we send out a follow-up email after the info session as well too. So I think it just seems like for us here at Pan, we're at a time of a lot of transition and a lot of growth. And so so maybe I'll take a step back for a moment. So what we're wanting to do with our time together today is start with the three of us from Pan to tell you a little bit about our intention for this afternoon, a little bit about how we have been touched by the Pan community and also some of the roles and tasks or jobs that we're needing to fill in. So just thinking about, and so I invite you to think about as we're going through this, to consider ways you might be able to easily plug in, whether you're in a space in your life right now where you have a lot of extra time to volunteer, or whether you have just, a droplet of time, and how best for you to bring your passion and your talents and your skills to this community. And basically, we want to leave a big chunk of time at the end to have a discussion with all of you to brainstorm, to kind of harvest and get a sense of what you all think Pan could be doing more for the community, what is needed in the region, and ways that you or maybe the organizations that you're involved with, maybe that you can imagine making connections and linking into what Pan is hoping to do in the next year or so. So why are we here today? What is our intention? As I mentioned before, we're in a place of transition as an organization, as a board. So as a board, we actually only have one paid staff member, and that's myself as the board coordinator. And the board coordinator only has 5 paid hours a week. So as an and everyone else is a volunteer. So as a nonprofit organization, we're very small, and we're kind of on a shoestring budget. And we also have a lot of resources. We have a lot of social capital within our community. We have a lot of the network that feeds into, that has been a part of building this organization, is a pretty big network. And so we really want to bring all of that into this next chapter of our work together. And we're also coming into a place where maybe 2 or 3 of our board members are coming to the end of their terms. And so we're actively looking for new people to be joining our board, or also to be joining some of our subcommittees. Let me say a little bit about Pan as an organization. So I just want to read you our mission, and then also invite Liz and Lainey, if you want to add any more about the organization yourself, I think that would be great. So Permaculture Association of the Northeast. And by the way, Liz has also prepared a Pan info handout for all of you. So we'll get that to you at the end of our session together too. So our mission is to increase the resilience of the Northeast region by strengthening the regional permaculture network and increasing access to relevant education and resources. Our work is informed and guided by the following values: permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share; transparency, humility, being of service to the greater regional permaculture community; reflecting the needs, issues, opportunities of the network, supporting decentralization, local autonomy, and self-organizing across the network, encouraging symbiosis, cooperation, and collaboration, valuing ecological patterns of organization, and commitment to social justice and liberation. I think one thing that I do want to add at this point, just as we're kind of introducing PAN as an organization, is to give you a sense of where we've been, where we're going, where we're hoping to go, what we're hoping to create, and the energy that's behind that. And so just to let you know that 2021 was not a big programming year for the organization. In the past, I think the convergences have been a real big point of gathering, and I think it was a big point of physical gathering of community, and I think it was also a big point of coalescing of energy in the community. And so with COVID, that didn't happen in 2021, and even in 2020, I think the convergence there was some talk about a virtual. Did it happen virtually?
It did.
It did. Okay. And so in 2021, we also had a number of board members who had some very challenging personal family situations, health situations. And so we kind of went into a period where it was just a little bit quieter, and we're stepping into a place now where we're really hoping to create more community and collaboration. And we're considering and imagining new processes for engaging within the board and with the larger community. And then also thinking about ways to create internal infrastructure that can serve all of this, that can serve the organization, that can serve our members, that can serve the larger community that kind of dips their toes into the PAN world and isn't necessarily an active part of the conversation on an ongoing basis. Liz and Lainey, do either of you want to add anything just in terms of PAN's history or the structure at this point?
Lainey, do you have anything?
I mean, I was just going to talk about, some positive aspects that I've experienced myself.
Please do.
Oh, sure. Just what Bonita was saying about the networking and the coalescing and the converging, even though, last year it was virtual, that's been really important and central to, what I find important about PAN and its work. Just being able to figure out where other people are in the region who are have similar goals and are doing similar work. I mean, my professional job, my day job is not, in the permacultural world really, but so much of my heart is. And so being able to know where people are, what they're doing, ways that I can be involved, and just, even like permaculture design courses, knowing where they're happening, who's running them. I often get asked by people, do you know where there's a PDC that's happening? And to be able to say, I know this one, I can recommend this one. I actually know the teacher. That's just been really, really helpful. And even if I'm just connecting other people to other people doing the work, that's just been incredible for me.
Thanks, Lainey.
That was great, Lainey. So I just wanted to add a little bit about the history of PAN, because when I joined the board it was 4 years ago now, that was helpful for me, like understanding kind of the context of the organization as a whole. And at this point, I'm trying to think, when I first came on the board, I'm pretty sure that PAN was like 10 years old. So now it's probably like 14 years old now, which is crazy to me. So the original founders of PAN, the people who were kind of stewarding the organization as a whole, who registered the organization as a nonprofit. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. And so that really kind of dictates some of our structure as far as some of the positions we're required to have for that nonprofit status to remain active and to keep up with it, that kind of a thing. So those original folks who were part of kind of creating this organization are not really involved anymore. So I would say PAN's had at least like 3 major kind of evolutionary shifts in this kind of 15-year period-ish, where like our kind of like main services and programs and what we were trying to do has shifted and changed. And one of the things that I've really liked about being involved in PAN is that no matter what, the conversation always keeps going back to, let's figure out what the network wants and needs, and really like dictating like our work as a response to those desires to fill that niche, or at least provide some assistance to help, I don't know, folks meet some of those needs. So I just wanted to add that piece of it as well. So I think people have taken a lot of ownership since being involved in PAN, which I think is really good for the vitality and the health of the organization. It should change. Like, that's the beauty of like any kind of a system, is that like new people and new energy can like change the work and shift it into different directions. But there's kind of core elements of PAN that are reflective in our mission statement that are kind of like a constant and really help ground our work. Yeah, so that's exciting. So I'll pass it back to Bonita, because I think that's what I wanted to say for now.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Lainey. And so for me, my first introduction to PAN, I think it was around 2013. And it was, I believe it was one of the teacher and organizer retreats at the Omega Institute. And then shortly thereafter, I attended the convergence, the Northeast convergence that was hosted in Quebec. And I actually haven't attended any of the PAN convergences that were in the States. And in all of the PAN gatherings that I've attended, I think what's really stood out for me was the sense of community. And part of it, I think I was really touched and really heartened when I went to those teacher and organizer retreats, because when I went down there, I knew a handful of people, but I didn't know most of the people in the room. And I was really struck by how welcoming everyone was. It was just the culture, it felt very collaborative to me. And so that was my early introduction to PAN. And then I kind of got into more of a personal sleepy mode, focusing on my own things in my life and in my little corner of the world here. And I just recently rejoined PAN as the board coordinator this year. And I'm just super, super grateful for all the people that are on the board. I think as an organization, from what I saw years back and what I'm seeing currently, I just think that we've really attracted some, I think that we tend to attract some really heartfelt, passionate, but also skilled people who are doing some great work and who also have a lot of connections in their own communities. And so for me, that's part of what we bring. That's part of what we have to offer as an organization. So the culture supports it, and the people that tend to join the organization and get involved, there just seems to be a lot of creativity and a lot of spark and a lot of juice. And I think that's also what I'm experiencing in this period, as we're kind of, it seems like for me as a relative, I think as the newest person to PAN on the PAN board or in the organization as the board coordinator, as we're on this cusp of change and looking towards what we might do for the next year or 2 to 3 years, it just seems like there's a lot of creative energy and excitement and enthusiasm. And so we really want to plug new people into that process, because as I mentioned before, some of our board members are going to be coming to the end of their terms. And so I think what I would love to do is just invite Liz and Lainey to say a little bit about some of the roles that we're needing to fill and some of what we're looking for as an organization, and just in terms of volunteers and the ways that folks might be able to participate at that kind of more organized level.
Want me to kick it off, Lainey?
Go ahead, Liz.
Okay. So in terms of PAN and really what PAN's looking for, I guess, as an organization is that there's a few different levels of involvement, like Bonita has mentioned at different points during this conversation. One of those is obviously being a board member. So we have vacant positions for board members at this point. And so that's kind of like the top, not top, but like it's one of the most involved ways to be part of the PAN work. You'd be kind of helping dictate a lot of the bigger decisions that are made as an organization, including financially. You have a vote essentially. So some of like the larger types of decisions that are made, you'd actually be able to like contribute to those decisions in a more specific way. Additionally, we are also looking for committee members. So this past year, we as an organization have kind of shifted to performing and coordinating all of our work through subcommittees because our board has grown a bit over the past couple of years to a larger number that it was a lot harder to accomplish those smaller work tasks in our board meetings. It just wasn't really enough time. We saw that it was going to be better, potentially better completed and more efficiently completed in smaller groups. But those committees are open to anyone who wants to be involved in PAN's work that doesn't want to be a board member. You don't have to be a board member to be part of a committee. So to me, that's one of like if being a board member does not sound like the right fit for you based on where you're at in your life, but you want to be involved in PAN's work in other ways and you have a specific interest, we have 4 kind of formalized subcommittees. And so depending on what your interest is, you may want to consider joining one of those. Additionally, there are kind of other ways too that folks can be a part of PAN's work, including obviously being a member if you want to do that, and then participating in some of our events, whether it be our webinars and actually just being a participant and going and even just sharing them on your Facebook page and the very like light duty kind of stuff. And I'm kind of curious, and it's okay if people don't know. I know, Matthew, you were pretty upfront at the beginning with kind of where you're at time-wise, which is great. But is anyone here particularly interested in potentially being a board member, or are folks like, I don't really know yet. I'm kind of like figuring it out as I'm listening to the conversation, just out of curiosity.
I could share a little bit more.
Yeah, go ahead. Mary.
I could share a little bit more about the committees if people like might hear something that sparks them as far as like what they could contribute. So we have a member web committee, which is really, it's about member benefits and website maintenance and membership value. I am actually on that committee. So it really is like, just kind of the lighter lift is like, checking the website and making sure that it's representing PAN the way that we want to be represented and that it's accurate and up to date for what we are doing. And it's also talking about like, what are we offering members? Oftentimes it's if you're a member, you can attend webinars, and we have giveaways and we have other events that are coming up. So that's just the conversation that we have all the time about, what is the value of being a PAN member. We also have a network outreach committee, which is about social media, our newsletter, contributing to the newsletter as well, especially, if you're doing work in this area, something that you might be doing, an organization that you have found that's doing great work, just kind of keeping people up to date about what's going on. Networking in general is also part of that. We also have a finance committee. I'm sure, it's not kind of my jam, but I'm sure that there's some people here who love numbers in that way and would love to be a part of that. And it's about fundraising and fiscal sponsorship, financial management. And that's kind of what keeps things running. So it is very important. And I do believe there can be a lot of excitement in there too, especially I feel like around fiscal partnerships where we're, partnering with people who have similar goals, similar values, and really helping us to make sure that we can reach people.
And back really quickly,
yeah.
Go into the next, the last committee.
Sure.
So one of the benefits of PAN having a 501c3 nonprofit status is that we are able to serve as a fiscal sponsor for smaller organizations or collectives within the greater region who are doing permaculture related work that are seeking grants, but don't have a 501c3 status themselves. So that's one kind of cool service that we offer to largely to our members who are applying for grants or receiving funding from donors that don't have a status themselves, but the donations are specifically related to if the donor wants to get the non-deductible tax kind of reduction thing on their taxes, like we can use our kind of organizational like 501c3 to allow them to do that. And same thing with the grants as well. So we've helped some organizations get grants by acting as their fiscal sponsor. And it's something that we want to kind of continue promoting because it's a relatively easy way in terms of like low admin cost on our end, but like big impact because it's helping, you know, some of these projects throughout the region build capacity and get additional funding. So I just wanted to note that real quick. That's, yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Lainey.
That is another huge benefit of membership, and another thing that PAN does that I think is just an excellent feature. And then we have an education, experience, and events committee, also known as EEE, and that's around our webinars, planning convergence. I'm also on that one. And it's just, especially right now, we really are changing the focus of what we're doing. You know, as Liz said, PAN has gone through a number of changes of people who are on the board and just the direction that we want to go. And right now we're looking, I mean, a major concept is decolonizing permaculture. And so a lot of our webinars, you know, and I believe, you know, are in the upcoming convergence, that's really going to be at the heart of what we're doing. And so that's going to be reflected in the webinars that we have, the conversations that we have, anything that we're doing. So those are the committees. And if you hear something that kind of sparks your interest, please do let us know.
Thanks, Lainey and Liz. Thank you. And so maybe just a couple of things to highlight. In addition to general board members, we are looking for a treasurer. So that is a very specific role on the board that we're needing to fill because our treasurer is wrapping up her term. And in terms of the subcommittees that Lainey mentioned, so she mentioned three of the four subcommittees are actually fairly, they're kind of short on people. So the finance subcommittee, the network outreach subcommittee, and the member web subcommittee, those three would love to have more members. So right now that education, experiences and events, I just call it EE. I can't remember what order the E's go in. That one has a full, there's a lot of juice in that group, and there's a full group, and the other subcommittees are definitely asking for more support and more people. So I'm just going to bring us into this next little bit. I just want to share a little bit about some of what we're planning for the next year. Liz and Lainey, feel free to chime in if there's anything you want to add to this. And then I want to just open this up to have a little bit more of a discussion with the participants that are here. So as I mentioned before, traditionally the convergences and webinars were kind of the main events for us that brought the most new membership, had the most energy around them. And we are planning for this year is a new webinar series. And we also want to create more participation. So even with the webinar or the online events still being online and not really knowing when we will have a big regional convergence yet, just wanting to create more participation. And so having the webinars be more than just kind of one way, sit in front of your screen, just listen to what's going on. We really
use this as an example. I know we've been talking a lot at you guys.
Yeah.
Please feel free to interrupt and ask questions as we go.
Thank you. Thank you. So some of the webinar topics or themes that we're thinking of that we are planning. So we've been talking about a spring campaign to decolonize lawns. We are in the process of kind of planning a foraging webinar session workshop. I'm not going to say who with, because I think Lainey's still working out the details on that one. That we're really excited about the potential of this presenter. We've been talking about also ecological design for self-care. And then in terms of the participatory portion of the online events, some of the ideas that we're really excited about is having a show and tell at the end of the session for everyone to show and tell some sort of plant or seed or something that's exciting from their garden. Doing a speed dating for networking, doing a needs and offers market, and then also sharing a story and maybe sharing a family food or recipe or something just kind of personal around food and just bring that connection back to our own family and community roots. I think, unless Liz, Lainey, do you want to add anything else before we move into the discussion?
I think one piece of the programming planning for next year that has emerged as a huge factor for us just in terms of coordinating them has been really increasing the diversity of our speakers and who were providing platforms to speak on some of these topics. And so that has been a increased elevation of consciousness, like among the people who are kind of helping plan for some of these events, to really ensure that it reflects some of the principles of permaculture that we adhere to, especially the diversity piece. So that's been a really big part of thinking about actually like implementing some of these webinars and planning for them for next year.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
So I want to invite us to kind of move into this discussion piece, and I'll open it with two questions that I think are quite related. And so just inviting you all to think about these things and to share your thoughts and ideas. So what more could PAN be doing for our members, and what is needed in our region? So imagining ideas of what we as an organization could be doing more of or doing differently, and plus putting that together with what else is needed in our region. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? And feel free just to share little thoughts or big thoughts.
The position, thanks all for the context. That was all brand new for me, so I appreciate it. I think the thing that I'm really connected to right now is like looking at what it sounds like you all are moving into, which are like decentralized organizational models that allow for a lot of self-organizing. I think it makes a lot of sense for a movement like this with some sort of like connective platform that provides the infrastructure to make that kind of coordinating possible. And I think the approach that I'd love to take in the Mid-Atlantic and maybe syncing up with what you all are doing is, finding a way to like help make folks who are participating in the permaculture movement more accountable to the values, depending on the positionalities that they're coming from, in a way that really like synthesizes land-based work with like internal growth work and political education. Because I feel like, and it sounds like it's really shared that has felt not present. And so I think what I'd love to see happen, what I feel like there needs to be more of, is really like ethical, equity informed coordination work. And I just feel like bioregional coordination is like we already have, like there's so many people, there's so many other organizations. I feel like so much of it is about like getting people to show up at small land-based sites who could use the like labor support, providing some like political education resources for folks who are coming through permaculture with no kind of grounding in that.
Emily, I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Sure. You said something and it was compact and it was really good. You said something, did you say ethical, equity informed? What did you say?
coordination work.
Coordination. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just like
I'm just taking notes. Thank you.
I feel like so much of us who are coming with more of the organizational or administrative skill set in the permaculture movement, it's like that's so needed, and we can build it into more of a platform and an organization over time. Um, but yeah, I guess what I'm saying is two things. One is I really think that the bioregional coordination work is like the thing that connects all the pieces and the people and provides the community, but also crucially is a really like I kind of have this whole thing for what I want Mid-Atlantic permaculture, which I'm sort of considering moving away from the word permaculture, but as a stand-in for now, like I would love for some sort of platform that like keeps the amazing regenerative like land-based focus, but also really provides learning communities and communities of practice around like upskilling our political education and really building equity into how we think about regional solidarity. Like you're saying, whose initiatives get promoted, but also like how do we circulate calls to action and showing up in different like either front lines or backing people. Like I guess what I'm really trying to say is like I don't really see the permaculture movement being indigenous led because it's so whitewashed. And while we can do what we can do to like feature more diverse, essentially feature BIPOC speakers and teachers and practitioners and initiatives, I think there's also just a really huge capture potential for doing political education and mobilizing resources to movements that might never identify as permaculture for super valid reasons. And so I'd love for that to be like woven into the platform, and the platform being like the crucial organizing or coordinating body. Anyways, yeah, that's where my head's at.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate all the information and learning about PAN. I'm very new to this, and so I can't say what's missing nor what's necessary. So I'll just say that I'm really interested in, especially given the nature of the work, small in-person opportunities, whether it's to learn or to, as you said, show up as because I'm really interested in the cross-sector opportunities. Like I do a fair amount of work in, I'm an artist, a theater maker, so my work is in arts and culture, but there's a lot of intersection with the solidarity economy and with the commons and commoning, and I'm also on a farm. So I'm really interested in how these things meet, and I really appreciate being in person and outdoors with people. It makes a big difference, I think, in how I experience things. And the work of PAN seems like really a fit for that, even though that takes a certain amount of lifting. So thanks, that's it.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, I would add to Matthew's comment. I too am pretty new to PAN, but not as new, I guess, with like permaculture and renewable systems and all that. And what I'm learning right now is studying like the circular economy in Northern Ontario. Hello, hi. And I mean, I guess, yeah, I can't comment with like Matthew said about like what is missing, because I'm fairly new to this organization. But yeah, super interested in so many intersections and the interrelatedness and interconnections of it all. I do natural horsemanship. So natural horse person, but then also farming and small market gardening and food policy work. So I love to see the intersectionality of it all.
Thanks, Lindsay.
I guess I can't really say much either, but do have a question.
Please.
So I'm not someone with a huge background in any sort of food related environmental things. And so I wondered, like, what does PAN's outreach look like with those types of people or organizations that aren't directly related to food, but you could find a lot of people that are allies or want to learn more and be part of it?
Good question. I think what's the word I'm looking for? It looks different every year to some degree. I would say that we maintain a database ourselves of all of the different kind of like sub-regional organizations that we know kind of exist and kind of keep our pulse on them, like the different permaculture guilds that exist within each state. There's a few other kind of like affinity type organizations as well, like New England Grassroots Environment Fund, Food Solutions New England. Like there's a lot of those types of organizations as well that we kind of identify as like partners in a less active way. Like we're not partnering them with actively on a project, but that like they're doing some work that's also furthering goals related to some of our priorities. And so we kind of like maintain a database for that. But in terms of the like direct regular communication with those groups, that's not really happening right now. And so, yeah, it's a really, really good question. And I think that as like on a project by project basis, that's usually how those relationships are kind of delved into deeper and are like, elevated to like a more active status. Lainey, do you have anything to add on that?
I mean, again, just that it's the networking that's really what drew me in and what continues to keep me. And so, like Liz said, it is changing regularly, but it's sort of up to us, right? And so, like the part of what we're doing right now in bringing in new people and new energy is saying, like, what is it that you want to see, and how are you connected, and what are some of the different ways that we can do it, ways that we might not have done it in the past, ways that we may have, but they have kind of fallen by the wayside, and maybe things that we just hadn't even thought of, and like sort of the intersections that exist and that are just maybe under the surface that we kind of need to just scratch that a little bit, and to really like find something new that will probably be really beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like I said, I didn't have a background in this, but I am very interested in it. And so having, if there's capacity outreach to organizations that you may not first think of, that could have people like me that are like, oh wait, no, I do want to learn more about this, will be great, because like I'm in urban forestry right now, and I feel like so much of what I'm connected with is about that, but it'd be great to learn more about intersections and just other organizations that aren't just about urban forestry, because that can get a little old.
Thanks so much, Natalie. I appreciate that question too. There were a couple of little dots that I would like to connect, and I don't want to go there, and because I don't want to go there yet. I just want to make sure that we have enough time to kind of just keep you all involved in the conversation and bring your voices into this. So the other question, and I think this is a harder question, and yet I think it's also really important for us. So if you have any suggestions or thoughts on this, in this period, I'd say in the last couple of months, we've had a lot of really amazing ideas coming from the board, coming from just this through these info sessions, but also just people who are kind of like just more loosely connected to the board, maybe past board members. We also have put out a membership survey. So there's just a lot of energy bubbling right now. And the question that I want to put out to you all is I'm thinking about the principle of smallest change for greatest impact. So as an organization with limited resources, just being mindful that we only have that, as for the one paid staff member only has 5 hours a week. Where are the points where are the places where we could put the more energy in order to have or like kind of really, really concentrated, focused energy to have a more powerful impact, because there are so many amazing ideas that are being put forward to us. And we know at the moment that we don't have the people power for it. And so just, I would really welcome your thoughts, ideas. They could be specific thoughts or ideas, or just kind of general, more philosophical things. Just thinking about, given this reality of only 5 hours a week and the rest of the organization is volunteer, how do we make the most of that in this period of change where we're gathering and harnessing all these amazing ideas and suggestions and wanting to engage people, and then also being small? Thoughts on how to do that? Insights?
And we are aware that it's a really big question.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a plight of like so many small organizations that are volunteer run. And it really, to me, goes back to what Emily kind of was saying before, as far as just like organizational design to some degree, like really, yeah. And so we're aware that it's very complex, but even just hearing some of your musings on it, I think are helpful, because we talk a lot about this as a group ourselves, in terms of as board members and people who are involved in the work pretty actively. But I think it is nice to kind of hear from other perspectives that we're not getting a chance to listen to regularly. So.
Sorry, go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say something that I tried while I was living at the retreat center in terms of that organizational model is creating work teams and having kind of like a standardized work team blueprint that provides some guidance and instructions and structure for how to structure a team, who's going to be a point person, what are your communication agreements, how often are you going to meet, on what platform you're going to meet, what's your kind of like goal or objective as a work team, and really socializing that in terms of having like a structure that people can self-organize. So they organize themselves, they make their own decisions, but the structure and the socializing comes from the central body. And then having a monthly town hall where the point people for all the work teams meet, share progress, ask questions, ask for help. That can be open to anyone who wants to see kind of like behind the curtains what's going on in the background, or propose a new work team that doesn't exist yet, or just hear from work teams like what's going on. But if I was in your position, I feel like I would really focus on the decentralized governance that allows more and more people to play more, honestly, to be able to give more kind of volunteer labor and play more of a role, and find ways that they can be rewarded and incentivized throughout. And so I think, having some leadership and decision-making authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that all comes from, I think having some structures and some internal decisions that grants that power and then also makes it easy for folks to plug into. And I'd be happy to share. I have like the work team's blueprint that we came up with and the central document and all this stuff. So if any of that would be helpful, I'd be happy to share it.
That sounds awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, I think that would be really helpful. I think it sounds like to me that adding that piece around the blueprints could really fit together well with the subcommittees that we've already started, and empowering more people to be involved in that process and or start new groups around that. So thank you.
I was just going to add from my experience of working with a couple of different like grassroots nonprofits, having so many ideas, so many great ideas, so many projects, not enough labor to do them all. Yeah. Instead, like what I have found has worked the most for me as like a volunteer, as a employee, has been having small concentrated projects and efforts instead of multiple different, just got the idea started and then kind of just jimmy rigged it together. Like that has been quite stressful for everyone involved. And it's really our time is valuable, and like our energy is important, and not to have that go wasted, and to close those loops in the processes. So part of what I was doing was creating guiding documents, or having one lead person per project, to have, okay, whatever you're interested, if you were interested in volunteering, having like a sign-up sheet. I love what Volunteer Ottawa does, where you can select what age you want to work with, or what section of intersectionality works best for you. If it's more farming, if it's more arts and culture, or what have you. And then, okay, you're interested in that, go talk to this person. Or like, we have a project for you. Like, I don't know, some linking network like that has been pretty helpful. And that went along with our newsletter sign up and our volunteer sign up and all that jazz. So whenever there was an opportunity, it made it pretty easy to send over that newsletter. So it's going to the right people at the right time. Just spitballing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Lindsay. I really like that.
I have a little bit more philosophical response.
Please go
and
ahead.
then I have to go.
Of course. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure. No, I'm really grateful for all your work and your belief in this. And I know what it's like to try to be building something from out of nothing and with very little resources, and also without being paid. So I've spent the better part of over 20 years doing that, and I'm on the other side of that, but it's an iterative question that never really goes away. I sort of think if it's being done right, which is how to draw people towards the source of, however you identify what the source is of what your relationship to permaculture is, what my relationship to permaculture is. And for me, I think when you talk about the sort of least amount of sort of resources and largest impact, I always get, and maybe this relates to a connection to theater and to maybe ritual and ceremony, but that which is experiential, I feel like is most meaningful and draws me closest to meaning and purpose. And so however it's possible with the resources of this vast network, and which seems like a network which people deeply personally identify with, how to draw from that network to create instances that are experiential and interpersonal and close to source and close to practice, so that then people can figure out how they can support it in these structural ways. So those are the spaces that call me. And I feel like those are the spaces which might not be extremely efficient in many ways. And actually organizing people to show up in space together is a huge amount of work, as you all know. But you talked about being around a campfire, that's where it happens. That's where, so that's my 2 cents. And I'm happy to be a thought partner in this and see how to help gather people around this in my small neck of the woods.
Thank you, Matthew. And just before you go, I just wanted to add a little tidbit. So this was one of the little seeds that, so just in a conversation with one of the board members this week, there were pieces that just connected a lot of what you all have been sharing in this last 20 minutes. And one of the ideas that really resonated for me was basically kind of creating some sort of template, small how-to document to encourage more people in the network to create local gatherings. Because especially in this time, like in the past, the convergences that I have been a part of and what I've heard, there's just been it's this gathering together of people and creative energy and sharing of ideas and inspiration, and people walk away with all of this kind of revitalized energy and just inspiration. And in COVID times right now, that's much more difficult, even crossing national borders, crossing state and provincial borders. And at the same time, that need for community, that need for cross-pollination collaboration doesn't go away. We probably need it more. And so just this, I would love to, if that's a piece that you would be interested in, Matthew, and anyone else too, that's one of the more participatory pieces that we're wanting to initiate in the next year as well too, is finding ways to actively support more local groups in gathering and in whatever ways that makes the most sense for people, whether that is, little work bees or potlucks or film nights, whatever it is that community is wanting, but just finding ways to support people and making some of those things happen. So yeah, thank you, Matthew, for that. And thank you everyone for all that.
That's really brilliant, I think. and I would really support that, the energy towards that, what you're talking about. And to the whole point about, you know, the name of permaculture, like the whole question of naming anything right now is problematic. I mean, in the best possible way. So beyond naming opens up the possibility for a rich, you know, super rich intersectoral conversation. So yes, so what you're talking about is sort of ways of creating structure for people to get lost together.
For sure. And I think that connects back to something you'd said earlier, Emily, which, so in that same conversation with this board member, we were also she was talking about how do we as a permaculture community, a so-called, you know, what we using this name or this label, how do we connect with more like-minded, like-valued, like-hearted organizations? And you were also pointing towards this, Natalie, I think, who may be for various reasons turned off by the word permaculture, by the permaculture movement, and yet our values are similar, our visions are similar. And so how can we, instead of having us operate in opposite corners because of whatever that is, can we invite more opportunities, create more opportunities for collaboration, for relationship, for conversation, so that we're actually building and strengthening this network as opposed to just operating in little separate cells. So Emily, yeah, please.
Thank you, Matt.
Everyone,
thank you,
thanks.
everyone.
Keep
Thank
up
you,
the
thank
great
you,
work.
thank you so much.
I do have a question. Is it too
Please.
late?
Yeah, please go ahead, go right ahead, please.
Yep.
Okay. So what exactly, like I've worked for organizations with board of directors before and stuff, but what exactly does being on the board of directors mean?
We are
What
going
does
to
it
share,
entail?
yes, we're going to share a document with you that actually, I think, yeah, is that the document has that in it. But also just know that, yeah, we're a working board. So if, yeah, you may have worked with some boards that kind of are just more like overseers. And, you know, and there's some like workers, and we are the workers. So it's a working board. And, you know, we could tell you more about it, but also I think Bonita is probably going to send that doc very shortly as well.
Yeah, and while anyone can be a committee member and not be a board member, usually we require all board members to serve on at least one committee, because Lainey is saying we're this working board. So having that like people power beyond just kind of like helping facilitate decision making is really important for actually doing the work and making sure it gets done. But yeah, we have a small kind of section on the second page of the handout that will give you guys that basically says like kind of at a baseline what board member responsibilities are. And essentially it's really attending meetings, which are at a minimum quarterly, but we're kind of flexible in how we operate. And so at times they'll be monthly. If, for example, a few board members are leaving at the same time, sometimes it'll be like, okay, we need to meet monthly for these next few months to just kind of like come up with like a plan for like how we're going to like transition, which is what we're doing now. But so essentially attending meetings by Zoom, and then also allocating between 2 to 5 hours a month. I would say it's more towards the 5 hour though range to do work, to do the actual work, especially since it would, you know, one of those hours would most likely be a committee meeting. And then granted, it does fluctuate every month. Some it might be, you know, higher to the 5, some it might be a little bit less, but in general, that's pretty much what it is. And then I think those are really the big ones. Obviously, being committed to following the guidelines and procedures as outlined in PAN's bylaws. We have a bylaws document because we're a nonprofit. But all of that is pretty simple. It's like, you know, we have a quorum. This is how we vote, is, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it's only a couple pages and it's pretty simple once you dive into it. I think those are really the big things though.
And I think I've also just seen in my few months of being with PAN that it sounds like everyone has been very, very supportive if a person's life, if other commitments are coming up. And so if someone is dealing with health issues or family challenges or whatever, that the board has been very, very supportive around, okay, this person is going to be less involved right now or in this period, or they're going to step out for a brief period. So yes, to be a board member, we are asking for that commitment. And also I have really found the team to be very, very personable and very supportive and very caring. And so it hasn't, I haven't found at any point that it's been, I don't know, like demanding or overbearing. Exactly.
Well, and
Exactly.
that, and like, I think we've realized too, that like we're all choosing to be here. Like we're choosing to be part of this group. We're choosing to be doing the work. So like I've been on the board for 4 years, like, of course things are going to happen, you know, like, and so for everyone to continue to be enjoy the work and continue to be engaged, like I think we figured out that we have to, and I think we're all just like supportive of the idea that like there are times when we need to like devote more resources to our self-care. There are times when we need to devote more resources to our families, to our personal projects. Like that's normal to have those ebbs and flows. And so I feel like all kind of just respond and like fill in when we need to, when folks are taking a couple months to like, because they need a minute, you know? And that's like that's been really, really important, I feel like, for the sustainability of our work in general, because we are that working board. So yeah.
And
Thanks, Liz.
I have another question.
Please go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Like, is there a minimum amount of experience needed? Like, I'm pretty young. Like, I don't have that many years docked onto my life yet.
There is no minimum amount of experience. I mean, even for like myself, as far as just like permaculture itself, I was very new to the concept when I got on the board. And so, I mean, I had been doing like community gardening, a little bit of urban farming, but like I had just completed my PDC, my permaculture design course. And just was mostly interested, as I've said, in like connecting with people and being able to learn more from people. And so like I came in kind of with the skills that I had, which, you know, for that first year, like I was around like organizing for the convergence, and then it went virtual. So that it was like, okay, well, let me use the skills that I have around like, you know, computer stuff and like, you know, getting invitations out and like trying to figure out like what that system would look like. And like, that's a system in and of itself too, right? And so, and even just like figuring out how to work with people and how to change and adjust based on everything that happened. Like it all connects. But, you know, I came in very, very green to permaculture itself.
Yeah. And I would say, and that's kind of the beauty of the whole journey, I guess, is that everyone is, you know, some people are more knowledgeable in one thing or have more practice in one thing, and other people have more practice and knowledge in another aspect of, whether it's organizational work or whether it's, you know, on the ground, like boots on the ground work. And so I feel like that's what makes the conversations and the project planning really rich, is that we have like different folks who are coming in with different skills and agreeing to kind of put forth these projects together. So I totally agree with Lainey. And even like another great example, like that kind of goes with Lainey's story of kind of her own background coming into this work related to permaculture. Our organization now is really trying to focus on how are we really building equity into all of the work that we do, both internally and externally. And everyone has different identities and experiences that contribute to what that work looks like. And everyone is at, especially for a lot of the white people on the board, at different points in terms of just understanding their own privilege and understanding oppression in our larger dominant systems and what role they play. So everyone's at a different point and everyone has a different perspective. And it looks, so it's just another good example of just like, we're all just doing the work. Like we're just doing it. And like you know, we're getting somewhere with it. No one's an expert. No one's like, that's kind of the whole point. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry about that if that's a concern to you, as far as just not having enough experience in permaculture or any other aspect of the work.
Cool.
We still want you.
Thanks for your answer.
Thanks, Lindsay. Natalie, do you have any questions?
Not right now. I do have to hop off.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for
your
being
day.
with us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It was
Thank you.
great
Thank you.
meeting you, Natalie. It was awesome meeting you too, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Great-
much.
Great
Yeah.
day.
Thank you
Hope
for your time and energy.
Thank you. I'll send out a follow-up email with some links just around ways to connect with the listservs, the Facebook group, the membership survey, and also the roundtable that we have on decolonizing permaculture that's coming up on December 7th. And if any of you have any questions, so this also includes folks that are also watching the recording, feel free to reach out if you have questions about ways to get involved, if you are curious about the board, the subcommittees, or just plugging in a smaller way, please reach out. So yeah. Thank
Lainey
you.
and Bonita, do you guys have 1 minute to just catch
Absolutely.
up? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take
Bye,
care.
Natalie. Bye,
Thank you
Lindsay.
so
Thank you.
much. Cheers. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.